What's up, everybody? On today's Fireside Chat, we're going to revisit a topic I covered in a video several months back about gear obsession and how gear doesn't matter, and flip the script on it. Gear does matter. Well, kind of. Let's get into it. Alright, a few months back, I made a video about gear obsession. In it, I talked about how gear isn't what makes us better as photographers, that we need to grow and learn composition, lighting, exposure, and those things are what make you better, not gear. And obsessing over gear doesn't really lend to improving the craft of photography. However, in that video, in which I filmed using the 56mm f1.2 from Fujifilm, which is right here. Now this lens is an 85mm full frame equivalent. It's 84, but for all intents and purposes, just say 85mm full frame equivalent. And to be honest with you, that's the exact reason why I wanted to revisit this topic. Because in filming the review of this lens, I had to pull up that video that I used to film to show what filming with the 56mm, 85mm full frame equivalent would look like, which I didn't recommend as a video lens, and I still don't recommend as a video lens because of the slow, very noisy, clunky autofocus, although it's a sharp lens. Okay, let me digress. You saw the review last week. We'll go back to that if you want to know more. Let me digress. So anyway, I needed to grab footage of the 56mm as part of that. And when I did, I looked at my face and was like, holy smokes. I did not like the way I looked in the video at all. But the emphasis of that old video was more on camera bodies and how most modern mirrorless cameras, APS-C and full frame, will satisfy 99% of our uses for things like street photography, weddings, portraits, family vacations. Most professionals can get by with a ZF or an XT5 or an XH2 for that matter. You don't need a $9,000 camera to do your work. Now, that's 99% of us. And if you're shooting something extremely crazy where you need that 1%, like say you're a sports photographer and you need that global shutter, that you're in the 1%. Congratulations, you need a crazy camera. That's what that video was about. And that's why I said gear doesn't matter. But once you choose your weapon of choice to shoot with, you still need the right barrel, the right lens barrel. Okay, that was a dumb joke, but let's move on. And that's where gear starts to matter. Look at that ugly mug, that round face. Now I'm filming on the 18mm 1.4 on the Fuji APS-C sensor, so that's a 27mm full frame equivalent. And this renders my face a little longer, a little skinnier, a little more flattering for me, although my nose is slightly enlarged due to the wider focal length. But for talking head videos, the 85mm full frame equivalent or this 56mm f1.2 APS-C lens just has too much compression and it's not flattering. It makes your face look much flatter, and that's not very flattering. God, I got dumb jokes today. I love it. The focal length you choose does matter, especially in portraiture photography. Take a look at this example from Dan Wojtek. I'll put the links in the description. On this photo, you can see he took the same photo, framed in the same manner at different focal lengths. And from 20mm all the way to 200mm, you can see how the face goes from being narrow with bigger facial features to being flat and wider, rounder, with smaller facial features. In my case, I was going from a 27mm full frame equivalent to an 85mm full frame equivalent. And if you look in these photos, you can see what that does to your face. The difference is very noticeable. Now, I prefer the way I look at 27mm because it makes my face look skinnier. Now, I wouldn't recommend 27mm. I would recommend around 50mm to get that real world, what your eye sees, focal length. Now, that's what I would recommend, but I'm gonna stick with what makes me look like I was 27 pounds ago, 27mm. Okay, I am just full of dumb jokes today, just full of them, I love it. Now take a look at this scene on what a car looks like at different focal lengths. Now this gorgeous car was photographed by a guy named Shumai on a Corvette forum. Great job. This photo is exactly what I needed. Shout out to you. Now at 18 millimeters, you can see that the car is huge, almost distorted. Well, it is distorted, and the background looks minuscule in comparison. Now, as he increases the focal length, the car becomes smaller and the background becomes more prominent in the photo. Once you get up to those longer focal lengths, the background is almost distracting. You can't see the full mountain anymore. You can't see the drive. The scene that paints like this picture of this car driving up through the hills just isn't there anymore. It's just a mess of trees growing out of the car and the road basically covering the background of the whole photo, and it's just not pleasing. I personally like the 35 or the 24 millimeter photo that he took here. Great job on the photos. Thank you for the perfect representation of what I was talking about. In my use case, street photography, I tend to use all these focal lengths for different reasons. As I talked about in my video a few months back, I think it came out right after the one I shot with a 56 millimeter, talking about shooting street photography at different focal lengths. The 18 millimeter that I'm filming with, which is also a 27 millimeter full frame equivalent, is perfect for that establishing shot, that shot that you want to paint the whole scene. If you want to do a photo set and you're trying to like show your shot of where you were photographing that day, and then more detailed shots of that area, you would start off with a lens like this one, and then you would progress to maybe a 40 millimeter, which is on here, the Nikon ZF. Once you got your establishing shots, then you use these lenses to get the detailed shots, the people interacting with each other, the people interacting in the scenes, things like that. And then shots that you're going to get on the 56 millimeter are going to be close-ups. Examples of maybe you took a picture of someone reading a newspaper, and then the next shot is them read the newspaper with their cigarette, and it's just a part of the newspaper and their cigarette. You would use the 56 millimeter, 85 millimeter full frame equivalent to establish or to get that shot after you've established it with a wider lens. That's all in a perfect world. Street photography is a very fast-paced environment, and a lot of times you're zooming with your feet, and so you really don't have the opportunity to do that with different lenses, which is why a lot of us pick somewhere between a 28 and a 50 millimeter lens so that we could zoom in and out with our feet quickly, and we have a lens that doesn't distort too much, like the 24, 20, and 20 millimeter lenses would. Now, if I'm in a denser city, I'm going to stick with the 18 millimeter APS-C lens, which is the 27 millimeter full frame equivalent, or my 28 millimeter f-mount lens with the Z to F adapter, because I need a wider angle to paint more of the scene so you can really comprehend what's going on. If the subject fills too much of the scene up, there's really no story to tell in most cases. There's always exceptions to every rules, but in most cases. So to sum things up, camera bodies, most modern camera bodies are very capable of doing most things you need them to do. Unless you're in a specific use case, like you're a landscape photographer where you need a camera body that lends to taking stable, high megapixel shots, or you are a sports photographer and you need a high sensor readout speed. Those are the times you're in the 1% where you need to get a camera for a specific use case. Most of the bodies will do what you need them to do. Now, when gear becomes important is when you need to get the proper focal length for what you're doing, so that you can take your vision and make it a reality based on what you want it to look like. In some cases, you're going to want that wide angle lens where you want to be more in the moment. You want to be immersed. You want to take a photo that's like you're in the scene. That's when you're going to use that 18 millimeter on an APS-C or a 28 millimeter on a full frame. When you want to be in the moment. And then there's cases where you're going to want a 50 millimeter where, yeah, you're in the moment, but you want less distractions and more background isolation and, a lot of things that a longer focal length will lend to. But then once you get beyond 50 millimeters, it becomes very hard to do street photography, which is my use case. This lens I got right here, this is my longest focal length that I currently own. And the main reason I use this lens is for portraiture or weddings. If I do decide to shoot a wedding, or I do decide to go do some portraits or some headshots, that is the lens that I'm going to use. And that is the lens that I used recently to do headshots for my wife. And when you're doing street photography, those discussions about background compression, they do come into play, but they're not as prevalent when your subject gets further from you. So take that into consideration as well. If you're an introverted photographer, you might lean towards a longer focal length. So there's different reasons for different focal lengths in different cases. But for portraits and for up close shots of product and those types of photography, you need to pay very, very much attention to what the focal length does to your background. All right, guys, that's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you got any questions, if you got any advice for folks, by all means, drop them in the comments. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe. Those things really help the channel, and they help me continue putting these things out for you. So anyway, that's it for now. I hope it really helps. Until next time, see ya. Peace. It was as round as the... Nope. I'd say, okay, let me back up and say that again. Don't really need the... No, I had it right the first time. Great job on your graph. No, great job. No. Take a look at this example I got from Dan Voigt. Probably screwed that name up, but I'll put a link in the description. Finally, I got it.